Hello, dear one. I'm going to tell you the story behind I Am Yours. If you've been following my journey, you've probably gleaned some insight into who I am, into my book, I Am Yours, as well as the larger mission behind everything. But I thought I'd make one video that encapsulates the whole story. I Am Yours is a memoir about my unwavering fight to protect and free my voice from the characters, cultures, and wounds that have tried to silence me. I Am Yours begins in Bangladesh, then moves to Thailand, then New York, and finally to Oregon. And through the backdrop of my personal narrative, we explore the many difficulties, dangers, and ultimately, the necessity for all of us women, for all of us human beings, to own and use our voices. I believe art is love physicalized. Khalil Gibran said work is love made visible. Everything I am, everything I do, everything I create and produce springs from and returns to my being a Bangladeshi woman. I was born in 1983 in Dhaka, Bangladesh, a country where voice, education, and the freedom of choice remain the most rare privileges for a woman. Every second of every day, I am continually cognizant of how lucky I am to have been born to my set of parents, to have been given an incredible education, to have been given the freedom to design my life as I choose. And I will work tirelessly to make it possible for others to have the same opportunities and freedoms that I have been given or have had to fight for. All of us, we are simultaneously the adult we are today, as well as the little child we once were. Our legacy on this planet comes from the harmony of those two things. I am the woman I have fought to become, and I am also that little girl from Bangladesh, and I will live and work and continue to live and work for all the little girls in Bangladesh and all over the world. My lifelong dream hasn't been purely to write and publish a book. More accurately, my dream has been to be a voice for those without one. I assigned myself this life purpose when I was 11 years old. When I was 11, I grew privy to a dark secret guarded by my extended family. The secret that a cousin, 20 years my senior, had been serially molesting other members of my family. He tried to do so with me, and thankfully, because I knew to anticipate him, I was able to escape. When I tried to expose his larger story and bring justice to the survivors of his crime, I was told that boys will be boys, it happens, and I was left to fend for myself. In that moment, two things occurred. One, I realized that the reason why the culture of predators exists and continues to exist is because, globally, there is a pervasive, insidious, systemic culture of complicity, neglect, and silence, particularly the neglect and silencing of the voices, bodies, and stories of girls. The other thing that happened in that moment was I made a vow. I promised myself that if the people around me weren't going to rise up and speak, then I would grow up to one day be a voice for those who have been silenced. What is remarkable is that as I grew from age 11 to 12 to 17, 18, 23, 27, my life continued to give me the most uncanny experiences to further understand and fill into my life purpose. Experiences that are very personal and yet hold universal resonance. Experiences that have all dealt with the culture of female silence, obedience, docility, and smallness, and the globe-spanning culture of misogyny, toxic male power, complicity, and violence against women. I have encountered rape, stalking, sexual harassment, and violence at school and in the workplace, and abusive relationships. I battled anorexia for 15 years, an illness which I feel is a side effect of being a girl in this world, a world that continually belittles its women. We absorb the abuse and we reenact the poison over and over. I've also worked as an actress and model. in the two industries that profit from the silencing, controlling, and constriction of women's bodies and voices. Between my Bangladeshi heritage, my childhood and teens in Thailand, my young adult years as an actress and model in New York, and the many predators, archetypes, relationships, and men that have visited my life, I have experienced an exaggerated version of the scrutiny, indignity, and dangers that most women face, each in her own way. We women, regardless of vocation or culture, every single day we navigate varying degrees of powerlessness, and our larger quest in life is to forge our path towards authentic power, freedom, and independence. So, that is the book I knew I could write. It was also the book I needed to write. I wanted to write a book that was not based on one theme or period of my life. I wanted to write a book that was a comprehensive investigation of what it is like to be a girl and woman in this world. On November 28, 2013, 8 days after I turned 30, I sat down to write I Am Yours. The impetus to write I Am Yours was threefold. First, I wanted to write a book that is a manual on holistic healing and belonging, a book that could help explain and mend the many wounds I'd collected through life, and that could help me forge an authentic sense of home and belonging. A pattern I've grown to recognize is that after the initial pain of a wound or betrayal inflicted, there comes a deeper, perhaps even crueler pain from the loneliness and voicelessness that follows. And it is inside this loneliness and voicelessness that our demons begin to breed. The demons of self-doubt, self-loathing, self-hatred, anorexia, bulimia, cutting, alcoholism, drug addiction, just to name a few. So part of my job on this planet is to write essays and books to help alleviate that loneliness, to help lay our demons to rest. Prior to writing I Am Yours, for 30 years it felt like everywhere I went, I didn't belong. Not in Bangladesh or Thailand or America. I looked for a home inside people, men, relationships, industries, addictions, beliefs, and even books. To ultimately realize that true lasting home, like true lasting healing, is something we create within. Secondly, I wrote I Am Yours to demonstrate through this book, my personality and my life, that it is indeed possible to battle and triumph against some of life's most cruelest wounds, and to do so without ever forfeiting our ability for love, tenderness, compassion, gratitude, and joy. Because how successful and triumphant is someone really if, after battling every dragon and climbing every mountain, they've become bitter, paranoid, downtrodden, stone-hearted, greedy, and cold? I feel true triumph and success contains both tenacity and tenderness, steel and sweetness. It is all connected. Life's battles can strengthen not only our muscle for resilience, grit, audacity, and courage, but also our muscle for love, empathy, forgiveness, compassion, gratitude, and joy. Moreover, as women and people of color, gratitude and joy are revolutionary acts. We live in a global economy and political infrastructure that profits off of the insecurities, self-doubt, self-loathing, infighting, victimization, and wounding of women and people of color. There are entire industries built to feed off and infect us with insecurities, pain, and woundedness. Therefore, joy, self-love, self-respect, self-esteem, and pride for who we are, as well as the refusal to grow bitter and downtrodden, are radical, powerful acts of political dissent and spiritual contribution to ourselves and each other. We women and people of color are not victims. We are warriors. If we, woman by woman, person by person, voice by voice, loudly, proudly, joyfully, confidently announce our presence in this world, refusing to grow timid, quiet, or afraid in a patriarchal, racist world that needs our woundedness, fear, and timidity to thrive and continue, we will dismantle the past and build a bright new future. Each one of us, we are revolutions born to be ignited. The personal is political, and the political is poetic. Lastly, I wrote I Am Yours to give myself a sense of agency and freedom as an artist and as a woman. Like I mentioned, prior to writing I Am Yours, I trained and worked as an actress. Initially, acting felt like the most obvious fit for someone like me who wanted to give voice to the stories that had been historically silenced. However, as I grew into myself over the years, the parameters of acting started to feel suffocating, especially as a woman of color. It felt like I was being called in to audition only for stereotypes. And remember, for me, art isn't art unless it contributes something meaningful to the larger human conversation. I was being called in to audition for exotic mistress of the leading man or hot girl in the club #2, when in reality, the roles I wanted to audition for were for bold, complex, three-dimensional women. Women who were fierce leaders, trailblazers, thinkers, activists. Women who were the hero, protagonist, and leading character of their own story, not the side piece, sidekick, or girlfriend of yet another leading man. And then it dawned on me that not only are complaining and waiting for an opportunity the most boring activities, they are also the least useful. So I posed myself a dare. Instead of complaining, waiting, and hoping for a truly fulfilling role to materialize, what if I willed that strong character into existence by becoming her? And what if, deep down inside, I had held the potential to become that woman all along, but for 30 years I had merely been behaving as a smaller version of myself in order to fit into the preferences of the cultures and characters around me? So I left. I left acting, modeling, New York, and the smaller version of myself that I'd become. And I set forth to genesis my own path. My first act of total self-authored independence, defiance, and authenticity was to write I Am Yours. Day by day, sentence by sentence, page by page, as I wrote, spoke, behaved, and lived in my most bold, audacious voice, I became the woman you see before you. It is true that I created I Am Yours, but it is equally true that I Am Yours created me. Because here is the thing. When the world fails to provide us the guardian, protector, healer, warrior, or opportunities we want or need, it is up to us to genesis them into existence. I am proud that I have used art to turn my pain into poetry and wounds into wisdom. And I've created a book that I hope will soften the suffering of others, that will deliver light, love, and power to whoever needs it, that will serve as a reminder that only you author your life. Your voices and stories do matter, and you have a radiant purpose and home in this world. When I trace my life, I don't see a sob story of bruise after bruise. I see a narrative with dozens of times when I could have let my light die, because that's what life asks of us, to fight for our light. It can seem daunting and dangerous to bring these stories of sexual violence, abusive relationships, and mental illness to life. It is all the more daunting and dangerous to do so as a Bangladeshi woman. But what I've learned is that the more daunting and dangerous a story may seem, the more ardently that society tries to intimidate and silence certain stories and voices, that is all the more reason for me to persistently, adamantly, loudly speak. Toni Morrison said that the function of freedom is to free someone else, meaning that if you've managed to wrestle free from a nightmarish situation, person, memory, addiction, mindset, prejudice, culture, or way of life, tell that story. Telling that story will free someone else from their nightmare. Art is the most elegant power. It is through my writing that I've been able to bring authentic healing and intimacy into my life and my family. It is through my writing that I was able to expose a decade-spanning sexual predator scandal and cover-up in my elite private high school in Thailand. It is through my writing that I now get to educate other schools and communities on the preventive measures required to create thoroughly safe environments for our children. Never underestimate the power of the human voice, particularly the power and persistence of the female voice. We artists, we are visionaries. Once upon a time, we were those kids who were able to pick up on the cruelty, injustice, unkindness, hypocrisy, corruption, and violence of adults around us. When we tried to expose this truth, we were told to quiet down. We were told boys will be boys. It happens. You don't want to create trouble. Hush, be a good girl. The thing is, the kids who are told to be quiet, most of us grow up to be artists. We then use the power of our words, our art, our music, our films, our books as a sword to slice through the darkness, to illuminate the truth that society tries so hard to hide. We hear these anthems of truth, illumination, wisdom, and freedom long before anyone else hears it, long before our audience hears it, by virtue of us bringing it to life. I lived the narrative that would become I Am Yours from 1983 to 2013. I wrote I Am Yours in 2013 and 2014, long before Trump, long before #MeToo, long before our current global, gorgeous rise, urgency, and conversation in women's rights, survivor rights, girls' rights, immigrants' rights, and racial and social justice. I wrote I Am Yours years ago, and yet it is astonishingly timely and timeless because although #MeToo has risen in recent phenomenon, Me Too stories have occurred for centuries and will continue to occur until we write, publish, and read the very stories and voices that have been historically silenced in order to gain the wisdom we need to evolve. The task of the artist is faith and focus, patience and persistence. Our task is to listen for that anthem of truth sent to us by the mysterious ether, and to trust the value of this song, even if everyone around us, including those who love us, do not believe in the veracity, significance, and gravity of what we have to say. Because remember, there will be a vast quantity of years, from childhood stretching well into adulthood, when no one will give a damn to what we have to say, as artists, as women, as people of color, simply as human beings. Use those years to your advantage as your training ground to quietly, patiently, stealthily train yourself into becoming an eloquent, excellent master at your art. Your art, which is your authentic power, your particular swordplay. Remember, we are not victims. We are warriors and revolutionaries. Thus, we must train for battle. Listen for your anthem. Transcribe, train, develop, polish, and then roar your voice into the world, trusting that in time, the world will listen. Or perhaps it is through us, stubbornly, patiently, persistently, loudly, adamantly, eloquently, roaring our riotous anthem into the world, that the world grows up and learns to hear and heed the value of our voice. One of my favorite parts to writing I Am Yours was writing the acknowledgement section. I worked on the acknowledgement section for as long as I worked on the memoir itself. On November 28, when I sat down to write I Am Yours, I opened 2 documents, one for the memoir and one for the acknowledgement section. Back then, not a single person on this planet was waiting, asking, expecting, or wanting to read any book that I'd muster. My one source of faith was my acknowledgement section. The first line reads, "All I have ever wanted is to be a voice for those without one." Following that sentence are paragraphs on the many people that have nourished, blessed, and mentored my path. In the writing process, every time I encountered personal doubt, fear, ridicule, and naysayers from my surrounding world, I would return to my acknowledgement section to add another line of gratitude to someone who had softened my path, and I would read again that first line to remind myself the reason I was writing. I would draw the fire to continue. I gave myself 1 year to complete the first draft of I Am Yours. 1 calendar year, because 1 year is an orbit around the sun, and the other word for orbit is revolution. On November 28, 2014, I completed the first draft of I Am Yours. I began revising the manuscript and querying for agents. Inevitably, the querying process brought rejections. After each rejection, I would return to my acknowledgement section to add another lifeline of gratitude. Once I signed with my beloved agent, we polished I Am Yours and began submitting it to various publishers. Simultaneously, I started pitching my personal essays to different magazines. Once again, rejections. Once again, gratitude. Once again, purpose. Although I am only 5 years into my writing career, I have been working, auditioning, enduring rejection, and soldiering forth ever since I was 15 years old as an actress. As an actress, after every rejection, my go-to trick was to quietly recite my Oscar acceptance speech. The speech that begins with the line, "All I have ever wanted is to be a voice for those who have been silenced." Working on your acknowledgement section long before you've sold your book, or working on your Oscar acceptance speech long before you've been hired for a movie, is not an act of arrogant naivete. It is a testament of faith, a testament of trusting the wellspring of determination, audacity, reason, and purpose held within. When our reason for pursuing a dream is identical to our purpose for being alive, and that purpose is tied to serving others, no amount of rejection, challenge, or even pain will sway us. When we merge gratitude with purpose, we become formidable, equal parts love and fire. Here is my journal from 2013. On the plane from New York to Oregon, on June 1st, 2013, I wrote a list of the values and feelings my future book would hold. Love, courage, empathy, truth. It came true. I am Reema Zaman. Thank you for listening to the story of I Am Yours. Remember, you too were born to bring an anthem to life.